So my sober date is January 10th of 2020, right before the pandemic. What a time to go in recovery. And 1757 is my days right now.
Nice, congratulations.
So better than 1500, not quite to 2000 yet.
Yeah. And if you drank like we drank,
Oh.
1757 days is a big deal.
But it is every day because it's truly a daily reprieve. It's a choice made every day. Yeah, it's no small thing, and it's no. That's why I love in almost every meeting they read that part of the chapter 5. The easier, softer way is such. Just that phrasing really is reflective of almost every time I'd ever try to do like a self-help program. Go to the go to Barnes and Noble, go find some highfalutin kind of, Zen master's going to teach me how to fix myself kind of thing, Mm-hmm. But I would always be the common denominator that I was interjecting into that interaction with, going to the store even with the best intentions. But I would always be looking for that easier, softer way. And I think that's where that true rigorous honesty of the program comes in, is that when you don't choose the easier, softer way, that's when I feel I truly started on my path of recovery, is when I knew that wasn't my path anymore. Mm-hmm. That wasn't the direction that I could go and get any results ever again.
And you must go the way that was suggested.
Yep. Yeah, suggested.
Yeah. I saw a post about that, something about the easier, softer way didn't seem like the easier, softer way sometimes.
Not at all. There's a lot of hiccups along those, but there's a lot of, I think of one meetings that, you get those toolkits when you walk into a meeting, you get that phrase, that imagery that comes out of it, you put it in your brain. One that I remember picking up early on was the road, like getting drunk and staying high and being stupid was that straight road. You knew where it was leading, You could see all the stops, you could see all the wreckage, you could see all the problems that were probably going to happen. But getting sober was that turn in the forest, You don't know where it's going. And so someone's going to more often choose the way that is, predictable, even though it's not where you should be going.
Mm-hmm. Comfortable.
Because to go the right way is actually uncomfortable because you don't know. Mm-hmm. It's uncertain. But, there's a certain insanity about that too, right? To continually choose. Yeah.
I just had to keep choosing the comfortable wrong path enough times that when I did finally have the leap of faith and make the right turn, it worked. And then I still kind of turned back and went the other way anyway a few times.
Get tested out.
Yeah, I've had to try all roads.
At our men's meeting on Monday, which I just don't make it to that often anymore, and I need to, but I'm on the road when I'm on the road. We don't read that chapter 3 part that I think I remember we do at the Wednesday Spring Creek meeting. That we'd read that chapter 3 part, which was the list of all the things we've tried.
Yeah.
More about alcoholism was the chapter title,
yeah.
right? But just that last paragraph of all the different ad infinitum, all the different things that us drunkards had tried to gain control. But one of the best helpers that I had early on in the program was, and before I even dove into the program, but in the years leading up, because I knew I was going to need some of these tools in my toolkit, Russell Brand wrote a book called Recovery, Freedom from Our Addictions. And he did a really good job of just really taking the 12-step program and making it not just for the alcoholism, but that it could be applied in theory to any addictive ailment that you might find yourself in.
Yeah, definitely.
And so, it's nice to kind of have a broader view sometimes to understand and appreciate, Obviously, AA came from where it came from, and alcoholism continues to be, one of the main killers for a lot of different people.
Yeah.
But,
That would put it in the category that you realize it's a symptom. So
yep.
all those things are symptoms, and the underlying problem's the same. And from what I understand, it's a disconnect between me and God. Long story short, that's
Yep.
how I've worked my program and the solution that I've found. So that's amazing. You talk about the chapter 3, the more about alcoholism. There's a lot of times I forget about all the things I tried. Just today, I'm just doing different things. It's good to remember. Yes, sir.
Yeah. I hear one of the regulars, obviously, up at the Monday night meeting. I love the phrase. I hear it from a couple of them. I don't think about alcohol unless I'm in a meeting.
That's right.
I like that kind of phrase from the old timers. It's like, I don't even think about alcohol anymore unless I'm in a meeting.
I guess that's
But you're
means you
supposed
need
to
go.
remind yourself. That's the whole. I mean, you got a daily reprieve in your own program, but showing up at meetings is really where that group therapy and that constant, camaraderie that comes from that sort of setting is really where a lot of the health is for me. But then also just being able to remind each other of where we've been, who we've become. A lot of times I didn't see the change in me until I saw how people reacted to me in the meeting. I think that was kind of an eye-opening experience. And if I had just been kind of in my own little silo self, trying to do self-help all the time and not have that kind of mirror to the outside world, you wouldn't see what's actually happening. It's hard to see yourself sometimes.
Yeah. And your example wouldn't be followed and became help to someone else.
Exactly. It's not about you. A lot of times it's about you being you for the rest of the world, because you serve that function that you don't even understand. You can't see all the different things that you affect every day just by your being alive. And you best hope that, hopefully you're serving as best as you can.
Yeah.
So.
It's got to be the latest lesson I've been trying to learn, is to be more of service. That truly is the magic of the program. It gets you away from doing everything for me and gives you more of an attitude, what can I do for you? So I definitely don't do that perfect at all, but when I do put some effort into that, it pays off. It's rewarding. So you can read about that. I'm not sure exactly where to quote it from, but I know that's written in black and white that happens, and I've seen it in my life. So it's cool to even know that concept. I never would have even imagined. Like you're born and you start living and all you see is you, right? So like for me, I didn't know even people thought different than I did. It was like,
Yeah.
and then think about it now. Yeah, I think a little bit uniquely, to put it mildly. So
Yep.
yeah, to get some of these concepts from someone else, and those other people are motivated by God too, to speak help to you or to get you to help them, is also working with God, I think. Just some practice there, how to be unselfish. It's great, man.
No, yeah. I mean, the best way to be unselfish is through some sort of service. Yeah. The Benedictine monastery that was attached to my high school, the Benedictines have a pretty simple phrase of that encapsulates the kind of their whole way of life, and it's just work and prayer are the two things that you'll see in a lot of different Benedictine monastic imagery, and that's the dual life that they live is, you know, working and praying, and so they both see that as you know, obviously, you know, probably two sides of the same coin, really, right? You know, one supports the other. It's like, you know, faith without works, kind of from the Bible. And then it's interesting too, because in the Baha'i faith, which I'm a part of, one of the recent concepts that came out of that is that work is prayer. That through doing a good job at whatever work you have that is your work, that in and of itself is a form of prayer. And I think that that's really, and, you know, like the arts are prayer, you know, anything that's work, anything that is, you know, you can equate it with worship. And I think that's kind of a freeing idea for people, you know, if they need that kind of thing to push them to be more centered, more human throughout the day.
Yeah, that's
you know.
great.
Maybe that's kind of helps you understand.
It helps me.
Yeah.
It is true. It's like where your heart's at, that's what your mouth speaks, and like touching on what you're talking about, that's where your feet will walk to also. Yeah, and I've also heard it, the prayers, the conversation just between you and God, just the little thoughts of what you're doing while you're working, when you're walking. I do a little bit of all of that, I think. I didn't recognize the work part being a prayer too. That's cool. But I definitely,
Yeah, right?
I have my my converse with God in my head here and there for little items that I'm going through. Like, help me not to be this way. Help me to do better with this situation. I do some where I formally get on my knees once in a while and pray for some other people I know are struggling. But it's awesome. You put any energy into any of those methods, you put any energy towards God at all, I see it come back in my life.
Yep.
Always. It took a while. I had to practice looking back and seeing, noticing it. But I have never been let down.
I notice when I stop being connected.
Yeah.
That's what I notice.
Absolutely.
It might be the subtleties throughout a given day for where the benefits come, like the tangible, I can put my finger on it kind of things. But that's not the point. The point is it's worse without it. You know, the point is that I certainly, I'll be halfway through a day and realize that I skipped some things, you know, as far as my spiritual maintenance. And so that's important to learn, you know, it's another kind of discipline and boundary that you have to have in your life if you're going to be successful at those sort of things. And, you know, and that's more of a reminder to myself as I'm saying this out loud than anything, because it's like, it is that constant, you got to keep on flexing that muscle or else it, you know, it atrophies, and then that's really heavy to pick up the next time you're trying to pick it up.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great.
Yep.
I just went through quite a stint of doing just that, not praying as I should, and I was getting more miserable and more miserable. But finally, I'm like, well, what haven't you been doing so faithfully? So I'm glad it works that way, because what happens is things go so great, and then you're like, oh, things are good. And I guess there was a time when I thought, well, I don't need this now, and I went off on my way and back out into the forest. But yeah, now sometimes I remember to say, hey, this is going really well. That prayer, I seen that. Thank you. That's cool. That's one of the final lessons that I had to learn to stay in this game, is pray on the fair weather days too.
Yeah, no, almost especially sometimes, because, you know, that's when you need to be giving thanks and you know, giving gratitude. and truly appreciating what's been given to you, because I mean, even in my most, scientific of understandings of reality, none of this is me. None of this was given me. I am all just part of something, you know. My unique seat at the play, per se, my observation point is uniquely me, and that's great. That's something to be celebrated. That is rare and different, and will never happen again, right? For every one of us is that unique snowflake, truly. But you also have to understand in context, we're all just one drop in the big ocean of everything, not just humanity, but of everything, the universe and all, blah blah blah, aliens. But I mean, and as someone who's done geology my entire adult life as both a passion and as a career, that sort of perspective and zoom out and look at something from that level has always been something I've done, and to try to understand where I sit in reality. But it can, yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but it could be, it can be kind of mind warping for sure.
Yeah, so you have quite a bit of free time by yourself out in the hills. I guess you wouldn't call it free time, but you got some time to think out there, huh? Mm-hmm. In your line of work.
Yep. I still drive a bit, but I go through an airport a lot too. Drive over to Salt Lake and then get on an airplane to Salt Lake up to Wyoming, and gained all the points in the world from Delta. Gained some sort of level status that I'll have all next year, whatever that means.
Yeah.
You spent X amount of dollars, so therefore.
Yeah, I've kind of felt like those programs are designed just to track information, really. So when you get a free flight, that's your reward for helping them gather information.
And miles is different than the golden medallion status thing too. It's like a whole nother list of benefits that are only apply when kind of, scenarios, or you have to kind of do this to get that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. So they're kind of soft benefits anyway. But whatever.
Yeah. It's something, huh?
Yeah. I mean, at least the miles, because that's actual money at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. You have to move the decimal points over to actually calculate how much the real money is. But,
Delta conversion.
Yeah, well, they all do that.
That sounds like a real thing.
The Delta conversion. Well, and then the flight that I was going to be using to get from, I used to be flying out of Elko here, but since there's only the one plane that comes in at night and then leaves in the morning, so it's the 9:30 in and the 6 a.m. out, that really, it limits my options, because getting into Salt Lake that early in the morning, a lot of things were later. And so like my flight up to Casper is 9:30 at night. And so it was 13-hour layover or 12 or something like that. So the airline won't even let you book the ticket.
Wow.
Just, you can't do it. You can do one ticket at a time and force it to go.
Get your tickets while you're there at the other airport?
Yeah, but so now I'm going to have to use, and so Delta's connection up to Casper is going to die too, just like they continually cut back how many flights are coming in and out of Elko here. So now I'll have to drive over to Salt Lake and then use United to get me from Salt Lake to Denver, and then from Denver to Casper. So I'll have to use 2 planes instead of just the one.
Man.
If I want to keep on doing that, but yeah, we'll see how it goes.
How long is the drive?
It was 12 hours from here up to Casper. And that's why, that's why we looked at the kind of, is it easier for me to drive 3 hours over to Salt Lake and catch a flight that'll get me up to Casper in an hour, you know?
Probably.
I think all told from door to door, all things, it might be an 8-hour day of travel.
Yeah.
But then I'm there the next day, like I'm there late in the evening, but then up and at 'em, ready to go. So it ended up working out, but now if I have to do this United thing through Denver, it might have to make my trips longer, so it makes more sense. And we'll see how it goes.
You have to get a Tesla with autopilot.
I would not mind that.
Yeah.
God.
Fully self-driving.
Problem is, that's the thing is during the winter months, trying to navigate Wyoming is
Oh, yeah.
is a chore. And that's actually, I came back a day early this trip. A, because I had a doctor's appointment I couldn't miss, and B, there was a storm coming in that would have potentially jeopardized whether or not the flight out the morning I was going out was going to be there or not, because the snow was going to come in the day before and probably sock everything in. And then that flight that was going to come in the night before might not have been able to have come because of conditions, and that's plane sitting there in the morning was my ticket out, So I was just hedging my bets and rearranged flights and went on the one the day earlier before the storm. Actually came in hours before the storm came in, actually. It was crazy. I was driving up there and the freezing rain was starting.
Yeah, here it comes on schedule, huh?
Yeah. Yeah, when it was raining here in Elko, it was pushing. That same storm was a big storm all the way from the California coast practically all the way up to the Dakotas.
Wow.
It was one big system that came through. Yeah.
Are you driving pretty much now to the same place and back?
Yeah, so since this April, we've been doing a drilling project, aside from 1 month off, up out of KC, Wyoming, just about an hour north of Casper, on the southwest flank of the Powder River Basin, up against the kind of the bighorns over there. Buffalo and Sheridan are some other well-known towns up along that side of the Powder River Basin. And yeah, it's a fun cattle community, a lot of agriculture, but mostly centered around, obviously, the ranches and different stuff. The Powder River itself comes out of the bighorns there and eventually kind of goes up north through the Powder River Basin itself, but that's actually where the Powder River comes out of the mountains and down into the basin, is right there at KC. So it's kind of a fun area. There's some fun history. That whole area, there was the cattle wars of Johnson County. That was a fun saga to get into. Many of those families still live in that area. There's some Basque connections in the area for sure. They get Mormon crickets over there too. There's
No way.
populations of Mormon crickets that pop up.
Okay, we'll scratch that off the list of places to move.
It was settled originally by, people just homesteading and stuff, and then the oil and gas came in after the cattle war stuff that kind of settled. There's more private land over there on that side of the state than any place out here, like in Nevada. Most of the ranches have, a little patch of private, but most of their grazing is on some sort of BLM lease, system. They're using, it is their ranch, but they don't actually own the ground itself. Back there in Wyoming, they actually have large areas that are actually owned by the, it's kind of like that series Yellowstone, where there's, the land is the most important part, which is true. And so we're doing drilling projects out there, but we have to navigate all of these surface use agreements with different landowners to make sure we can get on to their ground to do the drill testing we have to do to figure out where the uranium's going. But we need permission, and we need an understanding of how much we pay them for using the roads, or how much they get paid for drilling the hole, which is all part of the agreement. And so it's both a good thing and a bad thing, because there's both kind of an additional step that has to go into it, but then there's also another step that's not needed because it's not on BLM ground, which anyone who's ever done any sort of work here in Nevada, exploration or mining or otherwise, everything has to go through them, all the permitting and stuff like that. What's nice about some being able to do drilling like that in Wyoming is that's one step that's not there. In fact, the state takes first seat in all of the permitting stuff, and then we kind of involve the BLM just to let them know what's been agreed upon between the proponent and the state. So Wyoming's pretty progressive, I guess, in that way.
Yeah.
Or
Sounds better.
they would rather be in control of that situation than allow the federal government to be in control of that situation. That's the kind of libertarian stance that they've really crafted that law, or how they've deal with those different regulatory duties there in that state is doing it that way, which is cool.
Yeah. No mistake that activity's going on right now then. So like, would it be going on anywhere nearby there in a different state? Like the same search for uranium, or is it kind of...
It's a rat's nest to try to go, especially down in Colorado, which there are in situ recoverable ore bodies outside of like Greeley area. But some of the NGOs, like here in Nevada, they've got the Center for Biological Diversity that sticks their nose into every mining interest that they can, and only ever sue the federal government because it's a business model. And if they were to sue the mining company, it wouldn't go anywhere. Anyway, but I've got my thoughts about that. It's
Yeah.
There's uranium everywhere that we can probably, especially within the West here, where there's some, if you know that you have a big stock of granite somewhere, big batholithic granite, that's your basement rock somewhere, which most of Wyoming and, parts, Idaho and Montana and going up into Canada is this Wyoming craton, just this big bunch of granitic sort of rock that makes up the basement granite in the mountains, it's the peaks and all that kind of stuff. That has a certain amount of uranium just in the granite rock itself, parts per million, whatever. That becomes a sandstone, washing down rivers, becomes fluvial deposits, which are just rivers and streams in geologic time, a sandstone, but not all sandstones are created equal. Sandstone that's a beach along an ocean is a completely different kind of sandstone than the sandstone that's filling in an intermountain basin, for all sorts of reasons. Then allow time to kind of wash and rinse that granite over time. One theory of the source of uranium is that it's just through that washing that eventually it created these roll fronts, these concentrations of uranium down deeper into the aquifer, where the meteoric waters, the oxygen-rich waters, were coming down through the sandstone and going down into the basin and eventually dropping out of solution, because it's the oxygen that's actually pulling the uranium into solution. And then once it finds a redox boundary where that oxygen drops out of solution down in the aquifer, that's where the uranium drops out of solution and then just becomes part of the interstitial grain space of the sandstone down there.
Wow.
And that's where we find it. We drill a hole from on top and then use a gamma probe to tell us how hot the rock is, just from a vertical hole that drops down on top of it. And then we have to try to figure out where this thing goes by playing Battleship from above, essentially.
E5.
It can be frustrating. Because, you step off one way or the other, and the roll front might have moved on you. These things are snaky. They go wherever they want. Anyway.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's been fun. I did this kind of exploration the last time I lived in Wyoming. That would have been from like 06, 07 through 2013. 2013 is when I came out here to work at Barrett Cortez Hills Underground. But Strathmore was the group I was with up in Riverton there for 6-7 years. And Yeah, we did a lot of hunting and pecking and chasing roll fronts.
Educated guess on where to hunt and peck.
The nice thing is you get results immediately. As long as you have a hole that you can put a gamma probe down on the wire line, you get results immediately that same day, which is very, contrast that to core programs here in Nevada, where the geologist has logged it, sampled it, sent it off to the lab. In the busiest times of the year, they've got to wait like 3 months to get those results. I'm drilling these these uranium exploration holes, and I'm getting results that day.
Wow.
Not 3 months. I get to watch the probe as it's pulling through these things, and I can watch the raw gamma readings before it even plots up on the screen.
That's cool.
But I'm a nerd like that.
Yeah. Well, that's helpful that it works out that way.
And I've been able to go out and actually put boots on the ground up in the hills out there. Along Pine Ridge, we've actually got the host unit sands outcropping because of a structural kind of. The bighorns are still pushing into the Powder River Basin, and so we get some of those units actually tilting up on end, where they were laid down horizontally, and now they're up at like 20 degrees or more in certain spots. It's really cool. But I can go look at that stuff, and I can go look at the remnant of where these roll fronts moved through the sandstones, and I've been actually finding uranium with my little scintillometer handheld deal out there, and it's been fun chasing that stuff.
That's cool. And it just motivates you to keep going.
And it actually has a material impact on the program we have going on too, because I can tell where there are good sands and where there's bad sands, and where there might have been a significant system moved through or not, just based on the remnant amount of uranium that's there. And so I can kind of direct our priorities out ahead. It's worthwhile and it's fun.
Yeah. Bonus. Well, that's what you want to find when you're trying to be rad at stuff.
Be rad. Oh, yeah.
I hope it has all
I haven't
those.
even mentioned the name of the channel.
Yeah, that's okay. Just felt like a good time to throw it in. That's our unpaid advertisement.
I wish that TV shows would do more like on-camera advertising instead of the camera or the commercial breaks.
Right.
Like they used to
throw it
have, like the mixer.
Yeah.
you
You
know,
can still find it, but
as part of I guess they probably still do that, don't they?
it's when people are aware of how that used to go, they throw it in. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's cool too. Yep.
Featured.
Yeah. Well, I guess for an example, I watched some Kill Tony, and they'll be talking about something, and they'll say, "By the way, this is sponsored by this," because they were just talking about it, and it applies to that situation. Just those are unscripted ones, but there's always a way to throw it in. I like that too. Instead of like stopping the flow of the production to have an ad and then pick back up. Yeah, I recently quit paying for YouTube Premium, and now I get to see all the ads that are actually on YouTube, and it's like, wow. So when people drop off of my videos at 5 minutes, I could say, well, that could very well be because an ad popped up, and they're like, yeah, wasn't interesting enough to keep listening to, plus I don't like that ad, so I'm out of here. But
That's all it takes.
yeah, it's fun to throw some plugs in there. Anyway, that's really what I hope everybody finds. I think that's finding the right thing for you that was intended to be your thing. When you can be that interested in it, that it's fun, then you can do all the things that you need to do to keep doing it, contribute
Yeah.
to the world.
It's been nice just to have that freedom of, working not the same way that I've worked the rest of my career.
Yeah, for none of that stuff.
It's scary and freeing at the same time. Scary because I'm my own boss, and and the risk that comes with that.
But you've been doing it for how long now?
I guess 2 years.
Yeah. Well, I'm proud of you for that. Envious a little, not going to lie. It just indicates to me you picked the thing that you were supposed
I don't
to.
know. Yeah.
It's like everything, if there's a need that you have, like it'll be met. So,
That's where it's a continual journey of faith for sure.
yeah.
And where I've just kind of let that be what it is, because any illusions or hallucinations I might have that I have any control is they need to be dealt with forthwith.
Yeah.
Those are just fantasies. But it's hard. It's really hard for the ego to accept that fully. Like you never. What did I hear somewhere recently that what is faith without doubt? Like doubt is like don't feel like you're a lesser, faithful person because you have doubt. That just means you're human still.
Nice.
Like be kind to yourself.
Yeah.
That's part of the faith journey is to not only acknowledge that doubt, but understand maybe where it's coming from. That's the whole point of what we call resentment and the fourth step and all that kind of stuff. Those are doubts. Those are things that make us fearful, right? It's the same journey. It's the same questions you're asking.
It's great that your journey weaves back and forth in and out of all those things. I dig it, man.
Yeah, it had to go somewhere, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm here to tell you all the corporate stuff that you're not a part of anymore is exactly the same as you left it.
Darn it, it hasn't changed.
Yeah, not quite. You still get to dabble with some of those people where you're at, I'm sure, but
There's always management.
yeah, but it's got to feel better. I think it just reminds me that there is an internal reward mechanism that is just getting sprinkled onto you because you're doing the right stuff. So all that other stuff seems like less of a headache for sure. Me too, even when I do the same exact thing I'm doing now, if I have the right frame of mind, I can sprinkle that reassurance in that today this is where I belong doing what I'm doing.
Yep.
So, yeah, the ego maybe doesn't want to accept it, like you said, but it's best that it does.
Yeah, the ego is just one of those wily things. It's like the ego is like trying to make somebody else happy, or to control how they think or perceive of you. Like those are things that are A, none of your business, and B, impossible. Like they're gonna come to their own conclusions about you long before you ever have any ability to, interact with that.
Yeah.
I think that's what the ego is every day. It's like that sort of always trying to appease something that is almost chaos in a way. It's that child just banging its hands on the table, wanting the thing it wants, even though it doesn't know why.
That's the danger of getting everything you want every time.
Yep.
That would rear its ugly head more often. Need to be dealt with. So, good that doesn't just happen as much anymore.
Yeah. No, it's very a lot calmer waters these days, than anything I've had to deal with. And, even though I joke about how I started recovery right before the pandemic, that was almost a blessing in and of itself because, there was a big simplification during that time, I guess would be the diplomatic way of putting it. There was a lot of minuses out of our lives, a lot of things that came completely out or gone altogether, and with that came a very stark simplicity, and I think that really helped me initially. Then just kind of lock in.
Yeah.
This is my path now. Like there's really not much else going on that can distract me from just kind of taking care of this right here.
That's
And,
great.
Yeah, because I was working still with a group that allowed for remote work, and in fact now we were all forced to do remote work, but we were all set up to do it and interact with each other effectively from remote. And I was still doing field work, which was the definition of remote work. It was just me in a vehicle showing up somewhere.
Yeah, perfect.
Me and the rocks.
Yeah.
Or water well sampling, maybe, whatever I was doing at the time. But not too many humans, in person, so it worked out. But yeah, I mean that's kind of the backdrop of doing that. But it's almost like it was perfectly timed because if there had been other distractions, it I might have found a way to trick myself out of it before I ever really got into it. Instead, I actually kind of dedicated myself to it, and when I started actually going to meetings, I already kind of had a daily routine of this is my life. So, and yeah, and we actually had I think there was a couple in-person meetings I actually made it to before everyone had to go do Zoom for a while.
Yeah.
Even the men's group had to do Zoom for a little bit.
When did you come in?
Would have been February.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, late
Yes, so you had
February.
about 1 month.
Yeah, because I think I got my 1 month chip, maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe I didn't get I definitely have my 2 month chip.
I just remember it was St. Patrick's Day, 2020, I think.
Yeah, it might have been. Yeah, it might have been after my 1 month by the time I actually made it into a meeting. So I bet you it was February. I don't think it was until March because it couldn't have been until March. Mid-March is when everything went into lockdown.
Yeah.
And I'd at least been to a couple of weeks worth of meetings before we had to switch over to Zoom. Yeah. Crazy to think about some of that stuff now.
Yeah, and then I guess we didn't start having outdoor meetings right away because I remember the weather was nice kind of when we finally started doing that. Maybe we kind of coasted a little bit.
It was
with
at
the
least
Zoom
a month or
meetings.
two of the Zoom, I thought,
Because
right?
nobody was going nowhere, were they?
No.
Yeah. I did one Zoom meeting at a meeting, and kind of the rest, I didn't do anything. I was too busy to do anything else. I was teaching kids at home, and yeah, I was with my family, which is a good thing because they're all straight and narrow anyway. So, yeah, I had a gap of meeting attendance then too. Just kind of all fuzzy now. But then in what month was it when we had our sit down to go through the steps?
I think I actually do have that recorded in that same app that I've got my days on, but I think it was that's in the summer, fall maybe?
Yeah, it was nice weather,
Yeah, it might have been July or August then,
Yeah.
something like that.
man.
Yeah, step 5.
So all spring we all just did what we had to do.
Yeah, yeah, it was a journey.
I guess that was the thing. It was getting spring weather, so I guess we would have been having outdoor meetings pretty soon, as soon as we could. It wasn't like a real great period of time
Now
without
we're in a
meetings.
completely different venue
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
the coffee pot's better. I
Now?
remember that was my the thought in my head that tipped it for me, and why I was like, Alan, we should let's go do let's move everything, stop everything.
Yeah.
Well, and they still hadn't fixed the other church. They had all that water damage from the burst pipe that
Wow.
came in.
I've never even been up there to look in the windows or anything.
Yeah, I mean, we had to switch venues in emergency anyway, and then it just became, we like this spot anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Makes it easier. I make it down to the Saturday coffee mug
That's
breakfast. That's one of my favorites,
cool. Yeah.
especially since I don't always make every single Monday.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll be able to make it to the Saturday instead, and so it's kind of my other meeting.
That's nice. That
And
counts.
there's people that show up to that never show up to the other things.
Right, yeah. Yeah, we all just show up where we show up, kind of.
there's a lot of common denominators, different people that show up everywhere, but yeah, everyone, people get comfortable with what they get comfortable with, and
Yeah.
of course, why not?
Yeah, my take on that is we all have to go out into the world in different places to help out different people. We can't all help all the people from the same place. We're not all the same either, so it's okay. I've had to learn that it's okay though, because sometimes you get the mind frame like these people should be going to this meeting to get this message, but yeah, you don't have to. You gotta find what works for you, definitely.
Unity through diversity, like a flower garden. If it was all the same color, the same shape, it would be boring.
Yeah, it would.
Compared to something with diversity and things that are unique. And maybe, of course, they're all flowers. Maybe that's the common theme, but they're all different, maybe, and it's more beautiful that way.
It's always cool, like when you find something cool to try to invite your friends. But if they don't dig it the same as you,
challenge. I think that's the challenge now, post-COVID, is rebuilding those healthy patterns of social involvement. People just getting out. I know with my mom, with my wife owning being part owner of the stage store, she's firsthand sees kind of how many people do or don't come out at a different, at a given time, sees how busy or not busy the downtown is. And, I've got, everyone probably has their own theories about why people might not be going out or whatever. And I just see it, and it's interesting to kind of see. There's even some seasonal changes, like when it's nice out, people tend to not be in town on the weekends to maybe do something because they're off doing something, or going to Boise or going to somewhere else, of course, right? And now that it's cooling off, she's seeing a little bit of a tick up in how many people are showing up and stuff like that, so, but it's still not really, I guess maybe this is just drunk me remembering how I used to party and stuff like that, but I remember when the Horseshoe was open downtown here before they got shut down, and just even after that, there was still a time when there was a lot more people coming out to just be out. And I'm just wondering if people got so used to staying at home after COVID that it's a hard habit to change unless there's a reason to change.
yeah,
And so because of that, they're spending less of that money kind of keeping this downtown businesses open. The commercial fun center over here that I can see through the windows, that's been great for my kids, but I worry that there's not enough people going out
right.
to
Well,
keep it going.
Things are more expensive now too. Got to weigh into a lot of that.
Yeah. And have wages increased
No,
to
not one for one.
bolster that. In fact, I think there's probably an argument to show that there's probably been a downtrend in wages
Yeah,
overall, for various factors. Because that's the thing. If you're not given at least the rate of inflation in an increase in wage every year, you're getting a decrease in wage every year. Maybe not. Maybe the HR doesn't want to go through that process every single year, but they better be keeping a pace of inflation at least with their pay bumps and increases. And geez, with the gold price where it is, I know spot price isn't the same thing as contracted gold out the door for these companies, but it's a reflection of how much money they're making each quarter.
Well, and they could be doing better to be more efficient with what they make. There's a lot of waste there.
And that's a controversial thing because when you say that there's
operation.
waste out there, then you're like, because you also see like how many vacancies and how many positions aren't filled. So then that's a disconnect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, speculative, I guess, or whatever you want to call it.
It's interesting. My own opinions about this is that we stopped doing the exploration we should have done decades ago. and the real work of exploration, the academic work of exploration, to find those next things. And then actually putting the money where the mouth is too, and actually going and drilling the damn stuff. That, for all sorts of reasons, we hamstrung ourselves or got comfortable and decided that we didn't need to go out and spend the money on that stuff. And sure, we've got some giant deposits that they continue to expand on, but there hasn't been any real new districts opened up or any new camps opened up, especially around here. Like there's almost a rain shadow around Elko itself, and most other activities are, Eureka, Beatty, Tonopah, every place else outside of kind of Elko's influence. And that's kind of sad. I mean, I guess while I say that, there's also a big successful lithium discovery up north of Wells that has happened in recent years. But it's like, in order to be successful, we have to switch to a different commodity. You have to kind of get out of the way of anybody doing gold around here. But then places like Jarrett Canyon are shutting down, you know. So I think there's a lot of opportunity that I don't think has truly been realized here. And I think that there'd be even more opportunity and growth with the big guys if they had stayed apace with exploration throughout all of that.
Yeah.
And there wouldn't be that contraction and, waste, speaking of it, if there was stuff to be going after, And obviously they're mining, but it's different than if you're opening up a whole new camp because you found a whole new $10 million ounce discovery somewhere. There's a lot of, money coming in, freed up capital that comes into that when those things happen, and people stop worrying about this and that, and wages hopefully in those scenarios start pulling up for people. I think there's also something to be said that when it was Barrick and Newmont, that they were almost a balance of powers. Mm-hmm. They were keeping each other in check.
Yeah.
And so there was a competition there that kept wages in the competitive range. Mm-hmm. And now that it's a one-stop shop, essentially, I mean, there's maybe Orla in town. There was First Majestic for a moment. It's kind of, and all the Kinrosses and Anglos and everybody else are kind of further afield in Nevada.
There's still a shadow of that.
I-80 Gold, too. I can't forget them.
Yeah. There's still a shadow of that Barrick Newmont competition in part of because of the union. That our wages go up every year 1%, negotiated through the contract. So that is still
the union associated with the Newmont side of it?
That's where I don't believe it's associated with either. It's like its own entity.
Oh, it's done that thing. But was it at certain mines only?
Yes, it was at all the Newmont Carlin mines.
So that's what the Newmont Association was the union was just in those particular mines.
And then when NGM came in and took over, they wanted to remove the union to make it more efficient to move people and equipment around. And so they kind of just acted like it didn't exist and said, this is what we're doing now. And they tried to just go ahead and go forward with that. But it turned out the union was more powerful than maybe all of us thought. And they're like, nope, you're not going to do that. So the union still exists now. And there was a stint there where we didn't get raises or anything. I remember that detail specifically. And then now, for this last new contract, they're always 3-year contracts. There's a % raise every year, like we've had every year that I've been there.
Probably in keeping with inflation, so you're not at least, or maybe even better than that, right?
It's negotiated between the guys in the union at our spots, the representatives, and the company. So I don't know what they base it on, but it's got to be something rational like that, the cost of living or whatever you want to come up with.
It's called collective bargaining for a reason, and it's sad to think that it's still needed today.
Yeah. It's needed more than ever, I would argue, right now.
I think that we're in that kind of era, that time period, that sort of overarching changes in economics and society and stuff like that, where that's a tool that's needed again.
Yeah.
I think there was definitely a time when it wasn't,
Right.
you know, where maybe the
When they
unions
were
even
separate
overreached,
companies.
you know, but it's another toolbox, another something to use to kind of tip the scales a little bit, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I've even worked at some of those other places you mentioned, and coming from the union place to those places, I realized they could have benefited from a union the way that we had it where I was doing
Well,
the Newmont
especially
stuff.
the style of work that's going on out at the mine, shift work, you know, that's sort of that's exactly where a company could easily, you know, be egregious about something,
Yeah.
and that you really do need that collective voice to keep things where they need to be. Yeah, I think you have to balance those sort of, maybe that's definitely considered a socialistic sort of policy, right? That needs to be balanced with policies that promote the growth of the business now,
Right.
because if you've got overregulation that's pulling down the ability for that business to grow, whatever business it is, coupled with a union that's continuing to bargain for better and better, as they should, then that's going to eventually just put that business out of business.
Right.
So the forces have to be balanced. You
Yes.
have to kind of have the headwinds going the right way, or else it doesn't make sense to continue to push for one or the other. But that's hard to gauge, and that's hard to like have some sort of trigger to turn certain things on and off at the right time.
Yeah.
You know, because there's politics involved. There's all sorts of public opinion involved. There's lots of stuff.
Yeah, you just got to magically have people on both sides that are dedicated to what's right for both entities, and then come up with a very beneficial agreement for both, and then it works. Just a balance, but
Yeah, it's called compromise, and we used to have
Yeah.
that in our politics, but we just don't see it anymore. I mean, rare cases. Actually, that's one of some of the stuff I put together a presentation this past month, and I can say that now because it's the first of the month. Over in Reno at a little conference that we were having, and I went through all the different things that were positive things, bipartisan things that had come out of Congress and Senate and government, so in support of nuclear energy and uranium and mining and stockpiling uranium and advanced nuclear technology and kind of all the government things that they can do to kind of push and promote those sort of things. And one of them was actually stopping Russian uranium from coming into the United States as a source of our nuclear power fuel source, and no real teeth in the bill until about 2028. So we've got like 4 years to get our shit in line. But the logical conclusion is we need to replace that supply. Hopefully, we can do that with domestic sources. Would be, you know, kind of the argument that I would make, and I think that's the main purpose of kind of turning that valve off, is maybe to start transitioning for domestic sources of that kind of stuff. So,
yeah, it just seems like that's what you'd want to do anyway.
and so it seems to be the only thing, back to the bipartisan idea, that seems to be the only thing that they can agree on right now, which is fine by me, because
Yeah.
I'm right in the crosshairs as far as, you know, who gets affected by it. So,
It's perfect that you would be placed in that position.
right, and then we could get into all that stuff, but
Yeah.
you know, it's been a fun ride. I get to keep on doing this sort of stuff. I get to go do another conference in Reno first week of December, and that's kind of the kickoff of what I call conference season. Because I'll go up to Vancouver, I'll go to Denver, and I'll go to Toronto before I'm done sometime in March with the conference season. They just kind of all back up through each other through the holidays and winter months. You know, in theory, that's kind of when everyone's available, because they don't have a drill rig turning somewhere, maybe,
Yeah.
right?
It's
the
too
idea.
miserable to drill.
Yep. 'Cause the conferences I'm going to are very heavy on the junior market side, which means, you know, exploration and startups and all that kind of stuff. It's like the startup techie vibe of the mining industry, you know.
Yeah. Everybody's enthusiastic.
Oh yeah, everyone's got rose-colored glasses on.
Yeah.
It's telling you everything's going to be the next whatever that's next door to them.
That's fun.
Yeah. No, there's a fun energy to that. Those conferences can definitely can wear you down, and I can't imagine going to them and still being a drinker. I'm very grateful that I get to be a sober individual in sometimes a room of drunk people. That's usually when I'm done for the night, when I find myself in that. But it's varying levels throughout the weeks that I'm maybe at this place or other places. But then I get the opportunity to go and see some amazing things. I had a free afternoon when I was up in Toronto a couple years back and went to the Toronto Art Museum. Awesome. Highly recommend,
All right.
like that kind of stuff. But then there was an actual get-together one night where the people who were putting it on had chosen a venue in the Natural History Museum. It was the Gems and Minerals room. Like that room in the museum is where they were holding kind of a cocktail hour with, a jazz three-piece playing music up in front and all these amazing gems and rocks and minerals on display everywhere else, and just geologists talking to each other. Like that was fun. Those are the sort of events that you end up getting to go to sometimes. And that was pretty special. So
Cool.
yeah, it was fun. But you got to balance that with home life and kids and school, and so I'm blessed to kind of be living such a diverse life, being pulled this way or that way. But that's why I really feel grounded when I am home, back in my home office, and whenever I am home, I'm taking the kids to school, and I can make time for those things because I'm gone when I'm gone,
Yeah. Right on.
Speaking of kids, what time is it?
It sounds like a good place to end it. Probably.
Yeah, probably. At a certain point here, if I don't get home, the wife will be heading out the door, even if I'm not home. So.
All right. Well, it's been great to talk to you, catch up with you, turn the recorder on just to capture it.
Why not?
I always like talking to you and listening to what you're up to, and I always learn stuff from your line of work. I enjoy it all.
I don't even know what that line of work is anymore.
Yeah. We'll let the audience decide, huh? Like, yeah, I think he does something with rocks. I'm not sure.
Charlatan, probably.
Yeah, it's cool. Glad you could be rad, and I'm glad that
Yeah.
you can be sober to
That is the key
sustain it
to
all.
being rad, I believe.
Yeah.
For me, at least.
And it'll also help you to not go back out also, I believe. You can stay kind of
Yeah,
satisfied,
that's kind of the
fulfilled.
funny thing to think about sometimes is just how much I don't think about that, and how much that isn't a factor in my life. And
you get a
it's
chance
hard
to be a normal human being.
Yeah, well, I can actually dedicate some service to this world that gave me so much already. There's a certain point in your life when, the world's is over, is done giving you anything. You're no longer really receiving anything new. At this point, it's your job to be giving back that which you've been given. And I think that's almost maybe the time when you become a true adult is when you've stopped really expecting anything new out of life, as far as like something that's going to give you
Freebies.
yeah, and that it's really more of it's giving you all the tools that you need.
Yeah.
Sure, you can continue to grow and to change, but you've been given everything.
It'd be like moving out of the house. Time to go get your own house. Time to go contribute with your own.
Yep. That tip from one side to the other. Have you ever watched Adam Savage's new YouTube channel, Tested? The guy
Yes.
from MythBusters.
I love it.
He went on, kind of a philosophic ramble, one of his videos about time versus cost from early in your career to later in your career, where your time is worth nothing.
Yeah.
And your materials are your main cost early in your career. You've got all the time in the world to build, put something together, whatever. But later in your career, the materials are cheap, nothing. You've got those dime a dozen. You don't have to spend anything on that. But your time is the most precious thing in the world because you only have so much of it to go around. Because, if you've done well in your career and you've gained that experience and people rely on you for expertise and all that kind of stuff. And I thought that was interesting thought.
You can just insert yourself into the situation and be able to produce whatever is in the situation. You won't need anything, just you.
Yep. No, and in fact, it's that exact paradigm in my brain that the worst day of my ego says, and is like the devil on my shoulder kind of comment. That's that imposter syndrome thing that comes into my brain, is when it's like, what did you actually do today? When actually what I did was be there.
Right.
Sometimes it's hard to actually put down into words every line item, every deliverable, everything that you ever actually gave to the world. But maybe just trust that you being there was enough.
Yeah, as long as you have the right guidance, guiding your steps each day, that'll be a sure thing.
Yep.
You'll be contributing what you're supposed to.
I think that's all we can ever hope for.
Yeah, man. We'll keep up the good work. 1757.
Here, here.
Right on, buddy.
Thank you.
Thank you.